Welcome to the Exponential Potential Podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change with your hosts, Jennifer Evans and Claire Oatway. Join us and feel uplifted and inspired as we share with you powerful and insightful stories, top tips and tools with our expert guests on an array of topics covering all aspects of life and business, designed to ignite your potential and help you thrive in times of great change.
Hello and welcome to Exponential Potential Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Evans, aka Zen Jen, and I am delighted to have a very special guest with us, Sherryl Lin Taylor. Sherryl Lin has been working in helping and assisting people with their health, in relationships, in partnerships, conscious business, and life transitioning, and so much more for over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And she is a medical intuitive healer, a spiritual guide, author, and facilitator. Her mission is to assist people in remembering the truth of who they are. And Sherryl Lin acts as a conduit for divine wisdom, helping individuals and groups to move beyond perceived limitations and realign their entire being so that they can live their life, their higher purpose. Welcome, Sherryl Lin. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Jenny. It's wonderful to be here with you.
Excellent. And today we're going to be talking about letting go of control, and more specifically, as an adult, as a parent with adult children who are going through addiction and psychiatric issues. And I'm sure that this podcast is going to be really beneficial for all of us that carry our loved ones, our parents, our partners, other family members, as well as colleagues, clients, friends. So I think this is going to be a really beneficial talk for everybody. So thank you again so much for being here, Sherryl Lin. So you call yourself the cosmic conduit. I'd love to know, where did that all begin? How did that all start for you?
Well, I'll start with the cosmic conduit. That I was talking to a friend and just trying to figure out what to call myself or how to describe what I do. And she goes, "You're the cosmic conduit." And it was like ding, 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 ding. So that's how I started using the name. And it felt a little uncomfortable at first because it sounded like a little weird, but I am a little weird. So it was perfect. But I believe, I don't have full memory of when I was a baby, but I remember times when I was little where I would see things or have perceptions of things and would be told, that I had an active imagination or that somehow I wasn't right, or I shouldn't say that. So I know I had these abilities, these intuitive abilities when I was little. And they kind of got squashed out of me just from, people thinking that it was weird. Yep. And it took a lot of years for me to start trusting that inner wisdom that I naturally have. But then it came full force kind of later in life, although I had learned Reiki and different kind of healing modalities when I was in my late 20s and 30s, and certainly was a spiritual seeker. That was a big thing. I was always looking to different religions or spiritual philosophies, just trying to figure out who I really, really am. And it wasn't until, later in my life where I started having things happen, mystical experiences that could not be explained in normal societal terms, that I was like, does this happen to everyone? It's like, no, it doesn't. It can. It's just that in my world, in our world, there weren't a lot of words for it. So that awakening took a while. And then the medical intuitive stuff, that I feel like it waited, like those abilities waited to come in until I was actually ready to use them in a way that wouldn't freak me out, and as well, um, where I really would understand, what the purpose of, like, being able to see into someone's body. That's a very strange thing, right?
Mhm.
Having those kind of abilities, I wouldn't have known what to do with them if I'd gotten those when I was younger. So it definitely has been a maturing process.
Yeah, it sounds fascinating and incredible. So my question as well, I have a question, was, you've really put yourself out there in terms of what you do. You're a conduit for divine wisdom. How do you move beyond your fears of being seen and putting yourself out there, and move beyond those fears and worries that most of us have regarding what other people will say, what other people will think, how they perceive us? How did you move beyond that? Because it's a very brave journey to embrace and own being a spiritual conduit and being able to channel the things that you channel. How did you move beyond those fears?
Well, I would say I'm not 100% there. There are
Hmm.
times where I still, oh, do I really want to say that? For fear of being judged or being misunderstood. But it feels kind of like a tap on the shoulder, that
Hmm.
if I don't listen to it, if I don't do what I'm here to do, then things don't go well for me. It's like I'll hear something like a message that is for someone else, and I don't just randomly go around giving those messages, but there's a reason why it came to me. And it might be during the course of a conversation that I say, have you ever thought about, maybe this perspective or that perspective? And then I get confirmation that, oh, there was a reason for that. It was not just random. So I think practicing in that way, just trusting that none of this is accidental, that I seem to have an ability to be able to take kind of airy fairy sounding concepts and ground them in reality, because I think that that's one thing that I was always afraid of, that I would sound just like a nut, like,
Hmm.
oh, you've got all this your aura is this color, and it's like, for most people that's like, okay.
Speak for you is cray cray.
Right.
Yeah,
But I
I
also
know what
think
you mean.
that, yes, I also think more and more, haven't you found, like, more and more people are open
Yes.
to to things that are unseen or scientifically difficult to explain. It feels like there's
Yes.
been more of an opening. And so that helps as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think, well, the more you're out there being seen and being yourself, the more you are attracting the people that are either like you or need your assistance, your guidance.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I think for me is to, there was a book years and years ago. I kind of remember it like on my parents' bookshelf, and it was like, feel the fear and do it anyway.
Yeah, I remember that book.
Remember that
Yeah,
book?
yeah.
And I read it, sometime years ago, and that there's an element of that too. It's like,
Mm.
yeah, you're afraid, but just the thing that I think that the understanding that you don't wait until you're not afraid to do something. The thing that makes the fear go away and dissolve is actually doing it anyway.
Yeah.
And
Yes, and
so,
yeah,
yeah,
and your book, we'll talk more about your book, but your book title is Wise Beyond Your Fears, which is
yeah,
brilliant. So we will talk about that a bit later on.
okay.
So, and you mentioned, people are ready, more seem to be more open and ready to hear the sorts of things that people like yourself, people like me, people that are more in tune to their spirituality. Why do you think that's happening right now in the world today?
I think for me, it's we've reached a tipping point.
Hmm.
kind of like if you think about how our ancestors were, a couple of hundred years ago, it's very much more connected to nature, being out, because there was no choice for survival. You had to grow your food, and you had to be in the world in a different way. And then as industrialization happens, we're spending less and less time communing with the natural world,
Mhm.
and getting more and more disconnected from
Mhm.
God, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call that energy that is
Yeah.
beyond us. Because, I don't know about you, but it doesn't really exist in this in this interaction of being on your cell phone. And then it feels like, especially with a lot of the quarantines and being isolated at home, that has been an accelerator of consciousness, because it has made us realize, like, oh my God, I'm spending all this time disconnected, and there's got to be more to life, right? And so there's an opening, there's an asking from the world, from people, for more. And what
Yes.
really is, it's a return to that connection, a return to
Mm.
deeper connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. People are seeking out more, aren't they? They want to know that they sort of have an inner knowing, or a sense of knowing that there's more to life than this. And so, what is it? And those big questions then start to come up, and then they start to seek help, and the teachers appear, as it were. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talked about ancestors in that part of the conversation. And so, this topic's all about being a parent, or being somebody that has cared for children. And then how can we still show we care about our adult children or our loved ones, um, without carrying them, without feeling that weight on our shoulders, without constantly worrying? I know my mum sort of relates worry and love and care to the same thing. She said, well, of course I'm your mother. Of course I worry about you. I'm your mother. So that's
Right.
kind of carrying, isn't it? So so
Yeah.
so how do we show that we care, we love, we support our adult children, our loved ones, without having that worry feel a weight on our shoulders?
I think the key for me has been, because I've definitely had lots of practice with a son who has a mental health diagnosis, and a daughter who's a drug addict. And then my father has dementia, he has Alzheimer's. And so it's very easy to get into okay, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I have to act in a certain way to help them, right? And there's varying degrees of what we think help looks like,
Mm.
as we know. Um, and the bigger picture is that every single person on the planet, I believe, has a journey that is uniquely theirs. And every choice they made, from even before they were born, just choosing, I believe we choose our parents, we choose a certain experience that we want to have for the growth of our soul, coming into a body on this planet. And all of those choices are uniquely ours. So when you think about that, even things that to us seem horrible, or we witness someone suffering, and this is only our perception. We're not in their body. We
Mm.
don't know if they're actually suffering, even if they say they are. Um, we have this idea that we have to somehow change their circumstances, change their journey. And that's not our job. That is not our job. I know my son was the first one to teach me this when he had a psychotic break when he was 19. And it totally shook, my world. But I learned that, because I have the ability to tune into not the person that is having the psychotic episode, but his higher consciousness. And I would ask, like, what's going on? How can I help you? And he goes, I am fine. I'm having a blast. I love like getting in the police officers' faces and seeing if I can push their buttons. And I don't care if they break my glasses. And he was having fun. He was not suffering at all. And that was a big wake up call for me, because to me, someone who's acting like that must be suffering, suffering with mental illness. And there were many times that people would, when they would hear a story about what was going on with him, oh, I'm so sorry, that must be terrible. And I'm like, it's not, it's not that fun being his mom and, having to, try and navigate so that I could find ways to, like, my goal became finding ways to help him be able to help himself, so that he had support that was not me, so
Right.
that he could be supported on his journey. And I'm happy to say, all these years later, he's now 34. All these years later, he is, he's doing great. He has his own apartment. He has his 2 cats. He has a relationship with the people that help care for him, watch over him.
Mm.
And, he's living his life.
Must have been really difficult as a mother to take such as it would be perceived by others, to take such a huge step back and allow him to experience his journey. But I think you hit saying, but you're not just stepping completely away, you're ensuring that he knows you're there for him, but not as a, well, you need to do it this way, you need to do it that way. This is because I think when we want somebody else to behave differently, it's, as you said, it's because that's what we expect of them, but it's also what makes us comfortable, isn't it, as well?
Yes. Like, why can't you just do it my way?
I'll be far more comfortable with that. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes. And, realizing, with a daughter who has drug issues, it's like, well, if there's many times I'm tempted to say, well, why would you use drugs when you have these other options? And it's like, that is her choice. And, there's no way I'm going to say that's a great choice to make in life. She wouldn't even say that. And yet that's what she's doing. And so it's very, it's important for me to keep remembering what I said before, which is it's her journey, and who knows what this part of her journey is going to lead to. I don't know. I can't know for people close to me. Like, I never get to see what their future is like. That wouldn't be good.
No. But how do you cope with or manage, or more than manage, isn't it? You're not just managing here. You are flourishing in your own self. But how do you, we all know the dangers of addiction, whether that's alcohol or food disorders and drugs. How do you stop yourself from, because we know that there's a potential for them in addiction is to OD.
This is a big one.
Yeah, how do you not want to literally lock your daughter up so she can't, how do you do that?
And I dealt with that with my son too. There was a period of time when he was really off the rails, and he was running around a big city, just making mischief. And I wasn't so much worried about him hurting himself, because he's not suicidal or anything. But I thought so if he says the wrong thing to the wrong person who has a knife or a gun, he's gone or injured. And so there was like a real possibility, in a city, that something bad could happen to him. And for me, this does not work for everyone. I have clients that they're just, their sensitivity level, this would make it worse. But for me, I need to go to the worst case scenario. I need to, for my own health, I need to say, well, what if someone shot him? What if my daughter OD'd? We have unfortunately, people that I know, friends of my daughters, who have died of overdoses. So it's real and it
Mm.
could happen. And so I've had to really look at, and I don't know how I would be if that happened. I don't
No,
really
no.
know until it happens. But I have to, for me, going and just looking at the worst case scenario, I would be incredibly sad. But I would never, I don't believe that I would ever feel like I could have done something to prevent it, because
Mm.
I know now that I do not have control over anyone, other than myself. It's not up to me even kids that are underage, we still have, we have legal control over them. We can prevent them to a certain extent, in legal decisions. But, having raised teenagers that were very spirited, there was a lot of times that, they would do what they wanted. They just would sneak it. They would do it behind my back, but they did what they wanted in a lot of cases. And I really didn't have as much control as I would have liked, or I thought I would have liked.
Mm.
So the control, just the feeling of wanting to control, just comes from fear. We think about that worst case scenario, or we hear about someone else who had a bad outcome, and we think, oh my God, what if, oh, I better, give her a different kind of advice, or, tell him, that that's not a good idea. And the reality is, you can talk till you're blue in the face, and they have a path that they're following, right? And
Yeah.
we don't know, where it's going to lead.
And how have you let go of the pretend, like a lot of parents may blame themselves for what's happened with their children. I know you said they've got their own journey, you can't control what they do. But how do you let go of that guilt and the blame and potentially the shame?
It was, it's been an interesting process, I would say. When I went back with my son, his dad was still alive, at the time he had the psychotic break, and his dad had some undiagnosed mental health issues. So it was very easy to just say, oh, you're going to be just like your dad. His dad didn't need Medicaid. His dad was functioning. But there was a lot of similarities. So I just, it's just, he's going to be like his dad, but he isn't like his dad. He's his unique self. And I realized that blaming didn't help the situation at all. Like, or feeling guilty about it did not change the trajectory of how things happened. And because of my belief system, that I really do believe that we pick our parents and we pick the journey that we're going to have, I thought, well, why would these two kids pick me? Like, lucky me, I get, I do sometimes, it's hard not to, I listen to a friend talk about, oh, and my daughter did this, and she's having a baby, and she got married, and they have a white picket fence, and that whole thing. And I'm like, and I'll feel sorry for myself. But then I remember, and I've had some wonderful friends and colleagues who've said to me, wow, they picked you because they knew that you would support them and love them no matter what, even though they're going to have hard journeys. And then it's like, oh, could I see this as a privilege to parent kids who, are super sensitive, super intuitive? Both of my kids are very, they have their own gifts. And, sometimes it's a stretch. I will definitely be very honest with you and say sometimes it's a stretch to think, that it's a blessing that I've been blessed.
Yeah, I bet when you say, oh, here we go again.
Yes. But ultimately, I have learned more from my kids than any spiritual book or spiritual teacher that I have ever studied with, because it has forced me to expand my perspective
Yeah.
and to understand more deeply about the human journey.
And it's a choice that you've made as well, isn't it?
Yes,
You
yes,
make a choice. You make a choice. Do I feel guilty and blame and beat myself up and and constantly tell my children this is how they need to live? Or do I make a choice and get into a better feeling place so that I can? You've chosen unconditional love, haven't you? Over conditional love.
yes,
You've
yes.
made that. You've made a choice of having unconditional love for your children, no matter what.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
and that's got to feel so much more empowering and uplifting, and knowing that you can send that unconditional love to your children at any time.
Yes. That is what they need
Mm-hmm.
from, and that's what kids need from us, no matter what their age. They just want to know that they're loved no
Mm-hmm.
matter what they do. They can make mistakes. They can, they can go off the rails, and that they still are loved no matter what, you know.
And you spoke about the trajectory, the journey that we all choose or that we all take, and we don't always know where that journey is going to go, how much of a positive impact it could potentially be on other people,
Mm-hmm. Right.
or the catalyst that they're being for
Yes.
other people,
I
and
remember there.
the potential changes that can happen because that person went on that particular journey, that perceived wrong path.
Yes. Yeah, there was a point some years ago where where my son did something that was against the law. I don't even remember what he did, but it was enough to land him in jail. And I was horrible, like my baby's in jail, it was, but he I mean, he didn't love it because he didn't get to eat the kind of food he likes to eat. but but he made friends, and he's a tree shaker. Like
Yes.
he was in there, and he had people like buying him things, and like he just, wherever he goes, like people love him. He finds his people. And he, when he was in the psychiatric hospital once, he there was a an orderly that had used excessive force on him, and he advocated for himself, and he reported the guy ended up, it had been a string of issues with this guy,
Mhm.
and he reported him and got him fired. So he's like a laser beam going into whatever situation he's in, and it's like, that's not right, and I'm going to say something.
Hmm.
So that is part of why he's here on the planet.
But it's having a when you're having anybody, whether it's your children, your parents, your loved ones, clients, it's taking a step back, isn't it, as well, and looking at a much higher perspective, and having a knowing that there's a bigger picture here.
Yes.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to share in terms of what advice would you give somebody, a parent, um, that's struggling with an adult child that has a lot of issues, whether that's addiction, whether that's mental illness, but just maybe it's repeating negative relationships, whether it's food disorders, an adult child that's having a huge amount of issues in their life. What advice would you give a parent?
The biggest thing I would say, even not just for parents, but if you're like, I mentioned that my dad has Alzheimer's, and
Mhm.
sometimes very difficult decisions, or knowing how to help. Um, and if you can cultivate within yourself the relationship with your higher wisdom, and really find in, you can do that through meditation, you can do that through being in nature, just connecting beyond, the everyday mess that life can look like,
Yeah.
so that you can hear that wisdom, that higher wisdom, And you can ask, what can I do? Or is there anything for me to do about this? And what is that, if there is something for me to do? And a lot of times the answer I get, which I kind of already know before I ask, is just let them know you love them and you're sorry
Mm-hmm.
that they're going through whatever, or,
Mm-hmm.
that's like the thing that I hear the most. But there might be something to do and there might not. It's like, don't worry. And the other thing that really helps me is, I often, even sometimes I have to imagine it if I'm not feeling it, imagining myself surrounded by wise elders, guidance, guides that are here helping me. And when I imagine my kids or a loved one completely surrounded by their own cosmic support team,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and it's like, and I kind of see them over there and they're like, I'm good. I got my support team around me, you know, and being able to visualize that really helps me when I want to meddle and try and fix stuff or make them do it the way I think they should.
Lovely. Thank you. I think that was those words, there's some real wise words in there, and I hope that helps our listeners. So you have a book out called Wise Beyond Your Fears. So
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about this lovely book. I can't wait to read it. I haven't read it yet. Can't wait.
It's been a long time coming. What happened was, and I'll briefly describe what happened was, I never thought of myself as a writer at all.
Mm-hmm.
But I would journal and, write a little, periodically. And then one day I just got this clear, like, go to your computer and start typing. I didn't even know what I was typing. And it felt very channeled, like it was coming from somewhere else. So like, wow, this is cool. And I started writing blog posts that I would also post on social media. And, I did this for a number of years, and people would say, is this like in a book somewhere? These, they would just be like a page or, maybe a little over a page, these short things on a variety of topics, but always with the focus of, somewhat what we're talking about today, somewhere like that, talking about how to manage relationships of all different kinds, and whatever was going on in the world, it would be what I was learning personally from my experiences, as well as clients, as well as things that I was seeing that could help people be of assistance. So after enough time, people telling me, you should put these in a book. This should be a book. I was like, all right, like, I'm going to do it. And it took me a while because the material was already written and I had to figure out how to put it together. But putting it together, it really is what I realized once I got it together. And this is just my author proof copy. But once I got it together, I saw what it was. It really is. And this would happen on social media. People, oh my God, they would say, how did you know that's exactly what I needed to hear today? So it's really almost like an oracle where you can say, all right, what is the message I need to hear? And you open it up and there's like a page or a page and a half of some bit of experience, wisdom. And it really is about my journey moving beyond my own fears, because fear is what keeps me, keeps us stuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
But there's wisdom like a hair's width away from that fear, if you can just get on the other side of it. And so this helps with that. It helps get through that fear into, all right, well, here's a different perspective. Here's a way I could look at it. So, yeah.
Great, thank you. And where can they buy that book? Will that be Amazon?
Amazon, yeah. Amazon, and it will be available, in Europe. I'm not sure exactly the full distribution, but it's.
But it will be, yes. But Amazon Amazon for sure. Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And it's an
And
ebook as well.
right, so paperback and ebook, marvelous. And the other thing that you provide medical intuitive healing and spiritual guidance sessions.
Yes.
And I'd just like to very briefly touch on that, my experience with you, Sherryl Lin. I had a mini session, and was really, oh, and I haven't told you this yet because I haven't given you any feedback about it yet. But so I thought I was going to see Sherryl Lin for my kidneys. And then I was thinking about it. I'm thinking, because I've had kidney issues since I was 17. And I was thinking, actually, no, my kidneys feel like they're pretty good. It's more my digestion. I'm having some issues. I love food, and I really felt that I should be able to eat what I want when I want it. And I've been through that phase before, but being having some menopause symptoms has affected my digestion. So I asked Sherryl Lin to go in and have a look. And you went straight to my pancreas and blood sugar levels. And I hadn't told you that I was getting dizzy. So I was getting dizzy, and I was also getting up about 5 times in the night to go for a wee. And I thought that was to do with my kidneys. But actually, since you mentioned check out your blood sugar levels, I was skipping breakfast. I've been skipping breakfast for months. So I've stopped skipping breakfast. But that very night, I got up. That night I got up once, and I haven't got up once in the night for years. So that was amazing. Thank you. And now I'm only getting up twice, which, before it was like 5 times. So thank you for that. But the other thing is that you tuned into that I didn't even know. I have a very close relationship with my mum and food, which I knew. But the thing I didn't know, you mentioned my mum, and you mentioned the genetic or the ancestry line of food, and food being an issue. And my mum has dieted near enough of her whole life. But what I didn't know, my nana died of pancreas issues, and you went straight to my pancreas, and worked on it. And she actually died from some issues of her pancreas. And the doctors initially didn't believe her. They didn't know that they thought she was making it up. They couldn't find anything wrong. But then it came up that it was her pancreas. So, and you specifically said to me, this is about your mum and your ancestry, your mum, your grandma, your mum's mum. And so that was amazing. It blew my mind. So I just wanted to give that bit of feedback. Sherryl Lin, she's amazing to tune into your body. She really sees things. So yes, please tell us a little bit about what to expect in a session, or what you can do for people.
Well, and thank you for that feedback, because
You're welcome.
I love hearing stories like that. Obviously from the story that you just shared, part of what I do is if someone is having physical issues, I won't say 100% of the time, I'm often shown into the body and can make adjustments. And I do it all etherically. There's no, I'm not doing any surgery or anything like that. Although, psychic surgery sometimes. But it really is, whatever's in the highest for the client, even if they're not coming to me for a physical issue, sometimes I will get a message, that the emotional issue is actually in the body, and that we need to make some adjustments in the body. So that, and then just, kind of what we talked about in this interview, but also, what the kinds of things that I talked about are in my book. People will come to me for those kinds of things where, they're struggling in a relationship, or in how they're feeling about themselves, or in their work in the world. Like, why am I here? What's my purpose? And I work with a cosmic team of energies that will assist in whatever way to shift their consciousness so that they can do what they're here to do without feeling encumbered by, doubt or fear or whatever, to help them move forward. I also do something really cool called a business matrix session, where I go into a business that someone is going to be forming. It might be in the very beginning stages, or it might be something established. And I see it kind of holographically like a matrix, and I can see where things need to line up to have the business flow in a certain way. Or, if they're considering like a partnership or bringing someone into the company, we can look and see how that person's matrix fits in. And I do that for individual entrepreneurs and their businesses, as well as a business as a whole, and the employees. So that's a fun thing.
That sounds really fun. Yeah. And how can people reach you, Sherryl Lin? How can they reach out to you and find out more about working with you?
The best thing is to go to my website, and it's thecosmicconduit.com.
Yeah.
And there's a contact form there, and they can reach out that way.
Brilliant. And we'll share those links on the page as well, on the podcast page. Thank you so much, Sherryl Lin. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and I thoroughly enjoyed our interview, and I hope for the listeners that was very helpful. And until next time, I hope you'll all tune in for our next episode on exponential potential. Thanks again, Sherryl Lin.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We'd love to hear your comments and feedback. And if you've enjoyed it, please click on that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and feel free to share. Join us for our next episode of the Exponential Potential podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change.